Let's start by getting the orange Cobra out. It's been a little while since I've driven it. It's been sitting here under the cover, which is nice. It keeps it shiny and clean, and it doesn't just build up dust sitting for so long. But boy, this car is beautiful, and I'm very excited to drive it around. I feel like getting it out, having a little fun with it. Yes, I'm very proud of that, in case anybody wants to know. So the orange Cobra is just looking beautiful. Love that car. It looks so good in the garage there, and it always has the cover on it now, so it's nice to see it sitting over there all shiny and nice. And this is basically a stock Terminator Cobra. It has an exhaust and a short shifter, but the engine is completely stock, never been tuned, never been pulleyed. So it's just a beautiful example of an original Cobra, and you just don't see that every day. So my wife and I both drive the Silver GT a lot. She took it to go run some errands. So it's been very good to have that GT just to daily drive and enjoy. It's an automatic. It's the only automatic Mustang we own. We've owned several GTs that were automatics. Not that we chose them to be automatics. It's just what they were when we got them. And so this one's really nice, though, for her to drive like that. She enjoys the automatic, and it is nice to just daily drive it. I was thinking about it today when I was driving it, how I don't have to worry about like the throwout bearing going bad or any of that stuff. It's still a 70,000 mile lower mileage GT, so it's a nice car. And a good thing about daily driving it is we can use 87 octane in it. It's just a standard GT stock with the stock tune and everything on it. So over the years, I mean, we've already put 12,000 miles on it. So that's 12,000 miles worth of savings instead of running premium 91 octane in it like I was daily driving the Mach 1 every day, and I have daily driven Mach 1s for the last several years with my red one. I put 20,000 miles on that car, and I did enjoy every day driving it. It was a beautiful car, and I loved just getting in and driving it and having fun with it. And at that time, I also had another yellow Mach 1 I was daily driving as well. I enjoyed driving that. And then a couple of years ago, I bought this yellow Mach 1 that I still currently have, and I daily drove that one for 10,000 miles. And so on and off, I've had GTs sprinkled in there that I had daily driven, and I did notice that, running the lesser grade fuel in them is, a little more cost savings there, and not having to always put the premium in it and daily drive it. So that's what's good about the Silver GT. Man, listen to all those birds. So I waited for the sun to go down on a very nice day, and I thought it'd be a good time to go and clean up the red Terminator. And I've mentioned before, I get a sopping wet microfiber towel and then a dry one, and I just very gently wipe the dust off and dry the car right after I wipe it down, and this seems to work pretty well. I did a paint correction on this car not too long ago, and it's holding up very nicely. And so I wanted to clean it up a little bit, enjoy getting it out in the driveway where I can see it and walk around it and enjoy it a little bit. And then I was going to put the new plastic cover I have for this car on it as well, so that I don't have to keep wiping the dust off of it. So those have been pretty good, and I really enjoy having those on the cars. But here's just a little bit of a walk around. I was almost finished wiping down the car. I'll show you a little bit here of the dust that was still on top of the trunk lid, but with the rest of the car wiped down, you can see how beautiful this car is and how nice it looks. And torch red is such a beautiful color. I really love bright red like this. And, it does fade quickly, so this is a good example of one that's not faded. It doesn't oxidize because it hasn't been out in the elements like other cars that I've owned that were torch red. But so you can see the top of the trunk lid still had the dust on it. I hadn't gotten that off yet, but the rest of it I had, and it looked good. So beautiful car, very happy to have it. And my wife came home while I was doing that, and so it was just fun to be out in the driveway enjoying the cars, cleaning them up, and just kind of being out in the nice evening when the sun's gone down and it's shady, and it's just a really nice time to be out. A lot of times I want to go for a drive when it's like that, and then other times I just think, well, if I can just enjoy being around my cars, I don't have to actually take the car for a drive to enjoy it. I can just be out here experiencing the car. And when you take the car for a drive, you're, stuck inside the car. You don't get to really see the outside. So it's kind of fun to just be out and around the car where I can walk around and look at it and clean it and enjoy it. But this is just a car that I really love, and I've always wanted a red Terminator Cobra, and getting a 10th anniversary was just the icing on top of the cake. It's just makes it even better. So there we have it. Red Cobra's got a nice plastic cover on it, and maybe I'll leave the link in the description of where I got these. I just bought them on Amazon. My sister got them for me for Christmas, just told me to choose what I wanted, and she bought them for me, so that was really nice. And so, I can still charge the batteries and open the hoods and stuff, and I don't feel like there's a heavy cover that's on it that's scratching it up. These are just nice, and they're basically dust protectors is the way I look at it. So my kids, the neighborhood kids, were all driving around the Power Wheels, and one of them had an issue with the wheel tread was coming off, so they asked me to work on it. So we jacked the car up, put it on jack stands, this little Raptor. It was just kind of fun. So I see this laser red V6 Mustang that's parked over here at the temple all the time, and I dropped my son off, so I decided to walk around and look at it. It's very clean. For a New Edge Mustang, you can tell of this age, this one's been very well taken care of, and I see it here all the time, and so I just wanted to come and look it over a little bit. It had a performance dual exhaust on it. You can tell the GT bumper has cutouts for the dual exhaust, but the V6 did not, so that's one of the ways you could tell this is a V6. No GT badge, although it said Mustang GT on the license plate frame. Thought that was kind of funny. It has black bullet wheels and the beige stripes, the V6 side scoops, and no hood scoop, so I knew it was a V6. But it's definitely a nice car, and I know a lot of people don't give a lot of love to the V6 Mustangs, but this one is one that I enjoyed looking at and, give it a little credit. So look at this dual exhaust. If you look underneath here, it branches to the Y pipe, and so the V6, the exhaust comes off the manifolds each side, and then it goes to a Y. And so if you look here, this is one of those performance exhausts made for the V6 that still has the Y, and then it branches off to dual mufflers. See, there's the branch up there. And so that was kind of cool to see. So we were here at the temple. My son had an activity there, and so the rest of the boys and I were hanging out and just enjoying walking around there. We brought the Bullitt with us. And so I love bringing my Mustangs here. It's a very nice place to go, a nice place to park the car and go for a walk with the family and enjoy. So that was fun. And then we went to a shopping center, and I parked over here, and there's this white V6 that had a whole bunch of body kit stuff on it, and I was going to show that to my friend with his 3-valve white Mustang, because we're always talking. I was going to tease him and tell him he needs to do this to his car, but I just like recording all the Mustangs I come across and just enjoying seeing them out there. So it's nice that other people enjoy their cars and modify them how they like it. So here's the Bullitt looking really good in the parking lot. Man, I love that look with the Bullitt wheels. True blue in the sun. That looks good. So that noise was a shopping cart. So when I went to return the cart, the Bullitt looks so good with the wide tires over there. Bought some cookies at the store there, and I love just sitting here and enjoying the cars. Then my wife brought me out a salad. She's really good to me, and she's always taking care of me, so that was nice. We got the GT here, beautiful sunset. Man, it's just nice. Now, something fun was my friend from high school sent me this picture and said that his nephew just decided to buy a Mustang GT. And I think that's really cool. It's a black '04. And I didn't know he was even considering this. Last time I saw his nephew was when my friend and I were like in high school and stuff. So the kid was like, you know, just a couple years old. And so now he's driving age and he decided to get a Mustang. And so I think that's really cool. Black '04 with FR 500 wheels. And he said that his nephew was even considering getting a Bullitt Mustang. So I said, wow, your nephew has good taste. I didn't know he knew so much about Mustangs. And this friend of mine, he has a C4 Corvette that we had back in high school. We used to drive around in and stuff. And so it's kind of fun to talk about these cars. And my friend had also experienced the green Bullitt Mustang, number 974, that I got to experience when it was brand new. So I told my friend to tell his nephew that his cool uncle knows all about the Bullitt Mustang, and he was around when they were brand new and when they came out. And I told him I still have my Bullitt, so he should come over and see my car collection, and I'll check out his black GT sometime. So we'll see if that happens. There's a little bit of driving around in the silver GT. Since I always record driving the other cars and they sound good and they're loud, there's a little comparison of what it's like driving a stock exhaust, stock everything Mustang GT. I came across this red '03 that I've seen before. It's red fire metallic, and I've seen it in a parking complex before. I know where the owner of this car works, and so I've seen it once in a while, but it came in while I was at the store, and it looked really good driving by, so I just did a little walk around when I saw it out here. But very beautiful car. You don't see very many this nice, especially in this town. There just aren't many at all. And then there's my silver one, and I really like the silver. I think silver with dark charcoal interior. The other one was red fire with parchment interior. So I think this is the combination I prefer more. But it's fun to see Mustangs in all their different colors and varieties. They all offer something nice. diesel truck doing engine brakes, not my car making noise. Ran that stop sign. Ran a bunch of errands and got balloons for a birthday party and everything. And then after, it was time to go back into town and get some pizzas. And so I just took the GT around everywhere today, and it was fun. It's a nice daily driver. It's a nice errand running car. It's fun to have this car too. So I went and got a couple of pizzas for the family, and that's just fun to run errands in the car. I always decide which car I want to take right at the moment, and the GT, even though I drive it every day to work and back and stuff, it was still a good choice to take out and enjoy. So I love this car, and it's fun to go pick up a couple of pizzas with and just drive around. So there's the orange Cobra looking good, and the other cars, Bullitt, looking good here too. And I've been driving the Bullitt a lot lately. Take it here in a second, but been driving the GT a lot. I took it actually out. There was an accident in the neighborhood, and I drove over to see what was going on and took the GT. Nice little car to drive at night. So here's the car show, GT 500. It's actually kind of funny. I was just thinking how I never see any of the new green Mach 1s around here, and here's one right here. That was cool to see. I was counting all the different colors of new Mach 1s and kind of trying to think of how many are around in town these days, because when the 03s were out, there were over 20, and I was thinking, I've never seen a green one around here, and then all of a sudden, there was one there. And speaking of green Mustang, there was this new Edge that was painted kind of a old classic green color. That's the way I saw it, at least. Maybe you could call it a more modern color, but I hadn't seen him around. There's the Bullitt looking good at the car show, and then there's this GT 500. I know I showed it for just a second earlier, and there was also a grabber yellow one there as well. But if you look at this one, you'll notice it's a carbon fiber track pack, so it has the carbon fiber wing, and those carbon fiber wheels, they're like $5,000 to $7,000 a wheel, and I've heard that they can crack pretty easily. I've even heard with the carbon fiber wheels on some of the Shelbys that they start to crack just from driving around on them. Like somebody had said that they had never had the wheel touched. Like they never touched it on a curb, they never hit it on anything, and they used a touchless tire machine every time they got new tires put on it. And those wheels on the, I think it was the passenger side, both of them were starting to crack. It was really weird. But I was just thinking, if I had that car, I would probably take those wheels off first thing and store them somewhere and put different wheels on it to drive around on, because, man, those things are just very delicate. But I know they're very strong as well. But anyway, so I was talking to the owner of this car, and he's had GT350Rs, and he still has some really impressive cars like a Trackhawk, and he said he has a F-150 Raptor R. So it has the same 5.2 liter Predator engine, just detuned is what he said. And he was telling me that that new Raptor R had an issue where he was dripping oil, and he took it into Ford and they looked it over and they evaluated it and they worked on it and they pulled the transmission off because they thought it was the rear main seal that was leaking. And it turned out to be the crankshaft. The back of the crankshaft was cracked or something and it was leaking. And he said that Ford wanted to buy the engine back or take the engine back and send it in for testing. And so they replaced the engine for him. And he told me that when all was said and done, it was $47,000 is what the dealership told him the cost was of replacing that engine. And I'm sure that's labor and everything, but I'm sure it was under warranty as well. He said it only had a couple thousand miles on it, but I thought that was very interesting because I know these GT500s have some issues with the transmissions. They had some transmission leaking issues and stuff where you had to replace the entire transmission, and it was like a $15,000 transmission if the car goes out of warranty and needs it done. So I know a lot of people have been upset about that. So anyway, that's what we were talking about at the show about this car. But beautiful car, nice orange one. I was telling him that when I went to Willow Springs for the Shelby event, there was an orange one exactly like it. It wasn't a carbon fiber track pack, but it was just like it. And the editor for Motor Trend had the car there, and he was just doing hot laps and really ringing it out on the track while I was there. And it was cool to see, so that's what it reminded me of. But the Bullitt was looking really good at the show. Usually I don't put my cars in car shows because people around here don't really understand what these cars are. And I was hanging out with my friend with the white 3-valve Mustang, and we were talking about it, and I was telling him how a lot of people will walk past the Bullitt and they have no idea that that car is one of 54 and that it has so much work done to it and that it's a true blue Bullitt and that they're very rare. Like most people just see a blue Mustang and they walk right past it and they don't care. And so I don't really care to put my cars in car shows around here because people don't care about them. They don't respect them. They don't know what they are. But in this case, there were a couple people who walked by, and surprisingly some younger kids who really liked it, so that was nice. And when I pulled in, of course, it had the cams chopping really hard, and an older guy was standing there when I popped the hood, and he saw the supercharger on top and said, "Oh, you got a blower on this." And I said, "Yeah, it has that, a built engine, cams, ported heads, bunch of stuff." But I was actually surprised that he knew what that was because most people don't know what a supercharger is. They walk by and they look at it and they don't know anything about it. So I'll give him some credit for at least recognizing what the car was and stuff. But, you know, at car shows, I don't like really walking off and leaving the car with the hood open. There was a mobile dyno setup that my friend was actually running, and I wanted to go watch, but I kept coming back and making sure that nobody was, you know, doing anything to the car, and it was probably pretty safe. But when I was in high school, we had an auto shop class, and if you left your car with the hood open, the other kids would go unplug your fuel injectors, or they would take your ignition coils and unplug them and swap them and plug them into the wrong cylinders, or stuff things up your exhaust pipe, or take your fuses out, you know. So because of that, I just don't trust people. I don't like leaving my car where people could come up and tamper with it, and so maybe I need to have a little more trust, but it's just something that I've had to watch out for over the years. I think when I was in high school, my twin brother and I had matching red Mustangs, and so that made it more of a target because I think the other kids were jealous, and they were V6 Mustangs, but they were still really nice cars, and I think kids just wanted to tamper with them because they were jealous or whatever. So that's just something that I have a hard time doing, is going to car shows and leaving the car where I can't see it with the windows down and the hood up. But so my wife went to go somewhere in the GT. I always love to hear it start from the outside and record it. So I took the Bullitt and went to a car meet with my friend with his white 3-valve Mustang GT. If you've seen on the channel, we put a lot of work into this car. New engine, all new timing components, new camshaft on one side that got chewed up and stuff. And anyway, I like to see he's actually enjoying the car and getting to drive it. So we went together to this little car meet at this old, well, not old, but, you know, kind of like a 50s style diner. So that was fun to go there. And they do that once a month, and so we just went and enjoyed having the cars out, and, you know, I love the neon lights. It's really fun when it starts reflecting on the cars. 3-valve GT sitting over here by the college. Went to the college with the kids for this activity thing they were having. Here's a GT convertible 3-valve with American Muscle wheels on it sitting over here. And we were just going to this kind of convention where college students made like arcade games and carnival things and stuff. It was pretty cool, CNC machine stuff. And here at the college, this red C6 Corvette is always sitting here, and it looks really good. And I'm always seeing it parked out here in the sun. And as I got closer, I noticed, wow, this thing is really sun-beat, which makes sense because it's always parked out here. And it's a nice car, and you know, even if the paint's a little run down, that's not a bad thing. The car is used every day and enjoyed, but man, this thing was just hazed and hammered by the sun. So I was actually surprised because I don't see very many Corvettes in this shape that are daily driven. Usually they're just tucked away in garages, and older people have them, but this belongs to, I believe, a teacher here at the college, and it's always here. But man, it is really starting to show. The red oxidizes so bad in the sun, but really cool car. But from a distance, it always looked nice, and looking up close, I can see it's got some damage. Bullitt looking really good. I took it to this other little spot here. This is where I used to go to class. I showed my kids. So I've been really keeping an eye on the intercooler pump on this. It's a newer pump, so it's not like it goes bad or anything, but I've just been paying attention now that I've been using the SCT tuner more for the gauges function, and seeing how hot the intercooler air charge temp is. You know, 128 looks like after driving and stuff. It's been in like the 130s, 140s driving around town, idling. It can get up to like 150, which is kind of high, but I'm just more used to the Terminator Cobra, well, my red one at least, and it usually operates around the 90 to 100 air intake temperature range. And so that is the temperature of the air underneath the supercharger, like in the lower intake manifold. So when you're driving around and that air is compressed, it gets hotter, obviously. And you want to keep an eye on that, because if it gets up really high, like 160, 70s, up to 200 degrees, and you're romping on the car, it could detonate fuel, melt pistons. It's, you know, it can cause knock. It's really not good to run hot temperatures on a supercharged car. And so my red Cobra runs cooler, but it also does have a aftermarket heat exchanger, which is like the radiator part, you know, under the front bumper there that you can see. And so it has twin fans on it as well, and it runs a little bit cooler. It's a little higher displacement. It holds more fluid. And so I'm just kind of looking at what the Bullitt is doing these days in the Torque Tech kit. And so that bottom right one that says intake air temp, that is actually the air intake temperature sensor that used to be on the cold air intake. And when you do the Torque Tech kit, you actually relocate that. You extend the wires and you move that sensor to the lower intake manifold. And so if you were looking at that temperature on a normal car driving around, it would be like 90, 100, whatever the engine bay temperature air is, but now the sensor's reading the air intake temperatures that's underneath the rotor pack and the supercharger. So that's something I've been keeping an eye on, and I've never really gauged that with the Bullitt. I've always just watched the air-fuel ratio, and this car doesn't have knock sensors, so it's not like it can retard timing for that. I think it goes off air temperature in this case. Like naturally aspirated cars like the Mach 1s have knock sensors, and they'll retard timing if they see knock, but in this case it's all in the tune, and it's all about temperature and stuff. So I've just been keeping an eye on that and seeing how hot it is, and it does run a little hotter than the other cars, but it also has an Eaton supercharger on it, and so people joke and call the Eaton the Heaton just to say they do make a lot of heat, and Kenny Bells make a lot of heat, and so my VMP supercharger is very efficient and it doesn't get as hot. So that's just something I've been watching a lot and driving around and gauging the temperatures and actually keeping an eye on now. And so I'm less wanting to romp on the car when it's hot. Now, something I did learn, and I think it was on the VMP channel, they were talking about how if you shut the car off after, a hot lap, or in the staging lanes when you're racing, the air intake temperature is going to rise significantly, and it's going to see like 150 degrees or more. But if you race the car as soon as you get going down the track, the rotors are now going to be sucking in colder air from the air intake, and hopefully a cooler day, and it's going to change that charge temp very quickly as it's sucking in cooler air. And I know when it's compressing it, it's also heating it up, but it's bringing in cooler air quickly. And so it's not really as relevant, the temperature, when the car is sitting or idling, as it is when it's actually running and it's actually sucking in air and compressing it in the cylinders. So the temperatures can be hotter, but once you get going, they'll cool down, especially under boost when you're pulling that air in. And something else to consider is when you shut the car off, now the coolant that's in the little radiator underneath the supercharger, which is actually called the intercooler. The heat extractor's in the bumper, the intercooler sits under the blower. It's like a little radiator. That stagnant hot water is going to heat soak, and the temperature is going to be really hot in there. But when you turn on the car and start driving it, it'll start cycling that coolant again through the system, and that should cool things down. So when you get on the freeway and you're driving, it cools down a lot. So I was just kind of testing it and driving it at a really early time in the day on the way to work. I wanted to see the temperatures and see how much cooler it got on the drive to work and stuff. And so I noticed that it was about 10 degrees cooler early in the morning when I drove to work, and those temperatures were actually reflected that the car ran about 10 degrees cooler in the air intake temperature as well. So that was just kind of a little study I was doing with the Bullitt and driving it in the cooler time of the day and checking up on it. So that's me driving to work now. was about 70 degrees going to work, and now here I'm leaving work and it's still in the 70s. And so the temperatures stayed a little cooler that way. But I used to daily drive this car. I can't believe it. It's like, man, this thing's an animal. So it's nice to have the GT. And so I drove the Bullitt to work today, and I told my wife, we'll let the neighbors see how lucky they are that I don't drive this every day and that I drive a stock GT when I get up really early to go to work. And so now they'll have something to be grateful for. But sometimes I am surprised I used to drive this every single day. So as you saw, I had a little bit of a hanging idle there, and the idle air control valve sometimes gets stuck on these. It's common. I've seen it more on GTs, but this is a Terminator setup, and you can whack that idle air control with old Reliable, the wrench. And but anyway, the wires on this one, they needed to be extended. They were a little tight from when I extended them to put them here. Part of the Torque Tech supercharger kit requires extending the idle air control wire, and so I wanted to do that. So I extended it, and then I had a replacement one here so that it doesn't hang idle like that anymore. And I just went ahead and installed that. And so this idle air control valve is a little different. Like the GT one has a port for a vacuum line that runs to it. The Mach ones and Terminators had a different design, and this one's kind of like that. I think the Mach one, the plug sticks straight up on it, so you have to be careful which one you get. But I did have this extra one lying around. I believe it is a Ford part, and so I know when I sold the car, the guy I sold it to had replaced it, and I think the one that was on the car is the one he replaced it with, and it's, you know, getting gummed up. I've cleaned them out. I actually cleaned it out with brake fluid the night before, and then it still started to have some issue. And I've heard that they don't really work even after you clean them out like that. So I used a Q-tip and stuff and got a bunch of carbon and junk out of it. But anyway, I just decided it'd be best to replace it and then hopefully resolve that hanging idle issue. It doesn't happen a whole lot, but I might even need to buy another new one. But I had a different elbow from my red 03 Cobra. It had a stock elbow when I bought it with a sensor on it, because it had a ported Eaton with a ported elbow and an IAC valve on it when it was, you know, the way I bought the car all installed on it already, but it came with the original elbow, so I had that extra sensor, so I swapped it on. But we'll see how that works. But now the wires extended, and there's some slack in it. I felt bad because it was kind of tight, and I didn't like it being so tight. And so I could even actually unplug it and wrap it around the back side, and it gave it a little more slack. So I'm happy about that. And this IAC is a little bit shorter than the other one was, so it doesn't reach as far. So let's take it out for a good test drive. And a good test drive means we're going to go have some fun with it, and we'll make sure the idle's still good. And you'll see here I get the car running and then I unplug the IAC just to make sure that it was wired up right. And when I unplug it, the car stalls. So that shows it works. So you can see with a cold start, you have to keep it alive a little bit. It's just the way it is. It has the PPRV delete in the tank, so the fuel pressure has to work its way back up there and stuff. But runs good. Everything's doing well. So that's the update for the Mustangs. I hope you enjoyed this video and stay tuned for more Mustang content.